What remains of them today? What stories can we tell about them? Of all those destinies during the Holocaust, the only thing that remains are their instruments.
This is a remembrance from the past, from the parents or grandparents and from their history, and it's a different way of memory.
This is the story of the Weinstein family and how they took care of these instruments. They showed that the Nazi regime did not succeed in destroying all traces of Jewish life and music. Getting these instruments to sing again was no easy task. Many were not played for decades. Musicians from the Rundfunk Sinfonie Orchestra Berlin are rehearsing with instruments that once belonged to Jewish musicians. They come from the collection of the Weinstein family. Avshalom Weinstein is the custodian.
All the instruments which are going to be played are from the collections of Violins of Hope. Some of these instruments were in concentration camps, ghettos, or belong to Jewish people and also to non-Jewish people who survived the war, and some of them unfortunately didn't. And it's going to be the first time that so many of the instruments from the collection are going to be played on one stage.
Avshalom Weinstein has brought 55 instruments to Berlin, most of them violins, instruments that he and his family gathered together over decades. His wife will also play one of the violins.
It's always very sad, but also very combining feeling for me. Like it makes me feel I'm a part of the family as well in another way.
Avshalom Weinstein accompanies the instruments whenever they travel the world to be played by various orchestras.
So this violin belonged to a lady named Joyce van der Veen. She was a child in the Netherlands, and she was hiding with her mother and her sister, and this is how they survived.
Joyce van der Veen was 13 when she was stopped by a passerby while returning home from a violin lesson. She was warned that Jews were being rounded up. She managed to escape.
She was also a ballerina, and when the war finished, she immigrated to the United States.
A young Jewish girl called Anne Frank idolized the young ballerina. Frank successfully hid from the Nazis, but then was betrayed and arrested. She died at the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945. In the hideout where Frank wrote her famous diary, there was a photo of Joyce.
She never played the violin again after the war. She danced, she was a ballerina teacher, but she never ever played the violin. And her daughter had no idea what was the violin, what was the story.
This is how many of the violins entered the Weinstein family collection. Relatives brought them, or the friends of Holocaust victims. Many survivors wanted nothing that reminded them of Germany after the war. Others donated them in remembrance. Some were brought with photos of their owners, but not every previous owner is clear. Each instrument has its own origin story.
This is kind of a klezmer violin. These are very simple instruments which were made around 1900. You can see this Star of David. These are originally inlays. Now most of these instruments we don't know to whom they belonged, so we dedicate them to different people. And this one is dedicated to my great-grandparents who lived in Vilna and never came to Israel, and they were all killed with their kids. And only my grandfather and one of his brothers survived. All the rest with their families were killed in Vilna. My grandfather's religion was music. He loved music, and he knew that the musical instruments, they were not the ones to make all these horrifying, horrible things. And he didn't want to see them being deserted, broken, abandoned, and he bought whatever he could.
Avshalom's grandfather passed the business on to Avshalom's father, Amnon Weinstein. He continued buying and restoring the violins. The violins of hope, as he called them, became his life's work. He brought them back to Germany for the first time and arranged for German musicians to play them. Amnon Weinstein died in 2024.
It's never been planned to become what it is today, no. And my father spoke on a radio show, and he asked if people had instruments that belonged to Jewish people who were in the Holocaust, if they would like to give us, that we can put it as an exhibit and do concerts and lectures. And we started getting more and more instruments. The first lecture was 8 instruments, and then the first concert was, I think, 4 violins. And after that it started growing, and today we have 70 instruments traveling.
2025 is a special year. It is now 80 years since Nazi Germany was defeated. A time for the world to reflect on the beginnings of the horror. How could the Holocaust happen? In 1933, the Nazis seized power in Germany. The appointment of Adolf Hitler as German Chancellor marked the end of parliamentary democracy. In a very short time, everything changed. Through terror and semi-legal methods, the Nazis were able to push aside the rule of law and move towards dictatorship in a very short space of time. Everything was brought into line with Nazi ideology, pluralism destroyed. Thousands of Jewish artists lost their jobs. Their one option for a while was a Jewish-administered self-help organization. This cultural association organized concerts, readings, and Jewish cultural life. It was tolerated by the Nazis because it aided the control and isolation of the Jewish population. But pressure from outside grew ever stronger. The harassment of Jews increased. The November pogroms of 1938 were followed by the enforced closure of most institutions. Synagogues across the country were burned to the ground. The Nazis wanted to eradicate every trace of Jewish life, but they did not succeed. A German documentary from 2024 shows how the old songs are being sung again. The Zema Ensemble in Berlin is one group that is bringing the music to life again. The Nazis had tried to eradicate all traces. Descendants of Holocaust survivors around the world are now ensuring that the music is performed once again. Israeli composer Amit Vaina has been touring his program Music in Times of Tragedy internationally for 13 years.
Some of the songs are very simple, super simple songs written by amateur composers, and some are more elaborated and complicated pieces. How can it even be possible that people wrote music when they had nothing to eat? So I think that is the power of keep playing that music. And I think it's relevant during our times as well, to let people understand, I'm a musician myself, and to let people understand that to me, music is something that is more relevant during times of violence. It doesn't become less relevant. It's becoming more relevant because it gives people something to live for, it gives them meaning, it gives them hope.
Music and musical education were considered of great importance to many Jews in Germany and were an important part of their cultural identity. Many Jewish citizens were part of the educated elite. The idea that they would be in danger in their homeland was unimaginable for a long time. When they were deported, many took only their most valuable possessions with them. Violins were light. Larger instruments were too cumbersome. One reason why Avshalom Weinstein and his family have so many violins in their care today.
First of all, thank you very much. I know it's not easy to work and play on instruments which are not yours. In the camps, there were many orchestras. Because the Nazis wanted to have music, musicians, sometimes they had, let's say, easier works, maybe one more piece of bread, maybe a little bit better coat, and this could have meant survival.
Concentration camp survivor Anita Laska-Wallfisch experienced the horror firsthand. In a DW documentary, she tells the story of how she was deported to Auschwitz by the Nazis at the age of 18. Her musical education saved her. Her parents had made sure that she learned the cello as a child. She remembers how she became part of the girls' orchestra in the concentration camp.
I played cello.
Ich habe Cello gespielt. Fantastisch.
Fantastic, she said. There's an orchestra. Stay here. I was naked, with a toothbrush. That was a great kindness. She'd put a toothbrush in my hand and said, stay here and wait. She fetched the orchestra director, Alma Rosé.
Sie ist weggelaufen und hat die Kapellmeisterin von dieser Kapelle geholt. Und das war die Alma Rosé. Was schwer begeistert.
She was thrilled. Finally, she had a cello for the orchestra. There'd been a cellist, but she had died. I'd arrived just at the right moment.
Wir waren ungefähr 40.
We had about 40 instruments. Several violins, mandolins, one guitar, recorders, a cello. We were mostly children, amateurs. You can't imagine what it was like. It wasn't an orchestra.
Es war kein Orchester.
And Alma, don't ask me how, she managed to make something out of it that was acceptable. If we'd been so terrible that it was unbearable, that would have been the end of us.
Ja, was wäre unser Ende gewesen?
There were orchestras in almost all concentration camps. In Auschwitz, it's believed there were at least 6. The Nazis were cruel. They had them play marches and even had them play music on the selection ramp. In the Lemberg-Janowska forced labor camp in German-occupied Poland, these musicians were killed in 1943. They were shot by their SS guards while they were playing music. In total, the Nazis murdered more than 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. Cellist Anita Laska-Wallfisch survived. The Nazis did not manage to break her love of music. She was able to emigrate to Great Britain. She married the pianist Peter Wallfisch and co-founded an orchestra.
Life for me is divided in 2 parts: hell and ordinary life. The Nazis succeeded in destroying many things, but music? You can't destroy that. You can try, but it's impossible.
Unmöglich.
Anita Laska-Wallfisch was 19 when she was liberated from Auschwitz by the Allies. To this day, it remains her mission to warn future generations. The Rundfunk-Sinfonie Orchestra continues to rehearse for the concert commemorating the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. A study conducted by the Jewish Claims Conference in 2025 shows major gaps in young people's knowledge of the Holocaust. Even in Germany, 12% of 18 to 29-year-olds don't know what the Holocaust is. This at a time when the last surviving witnesses are dying, along with much of their knowledge. Avshalom Weinstein wants to keep the stories alive for future generations. He regularly takes the time to meet and speak to school children.
We don't have any sponsorship from any government, or I don't have a foundation that supports me. When we restore instruments, everything is on our cost. It's our time. But I think this is something important, so I keep on doing it.
I think these projects are very, very important, but it's also up to my generation to take greater interest in them. But I think it's good that there are people who make something of it. I don't think that it's always the right thing to hear long lectures about it, or to hear about it from people who aren't involved. That's why I'm also very happy to live in an age where, even if the contemporary witnesses are unfortunately slowly passing away, we still have recordings and interviews.
Avshalom Weinstein is aware of the importance of not forgetting, of talking about what happened from his own family experience. The trauma of the Holocaust also weighed heavily on his own childhood.
When I grew up hearing lots of stories of the Holocaust from my grandmother. There are two types of survivors: those who spoke about it and those who never said one word. Many people never said anything to their kids, to their grandkids, to anyone. They didn't talk about it at all. Others did talk about it, so we do have the records and everything, but my grandparents, my father's parents, never spoke about anything.
80 years on from the end of the war, there are still many stories to be told. The secret of this violin, which belongs to a collector couple in Hungary, was only revealed in January 2025. Its origins remained hidden for decades. The art collectors acquired the violin with a set of furniture and initially stowed it away. As the violin sounded a little odd, the art collectors decided to have it repaired. What followed was a sensation. The violin was clearly made in the Nazi concentration camp in Dachau in 1941, and a note was hidden inside.
You can see a label which suggests it was made in Dachau. And this part of the violin holds a time capsule that was only discovered during the restoration of the instrument.
The violin was built by Polish prisoner Franciszek Franz Kempa. The note is an apology for the instrument's limitations due to the conditions under which it was made. Kempa, a Polish violin maker, was arrested during the Nazi dictatorship and deported to Sachsenhausen and later to Dachau. His instrument-making skill may have saved his life.
Kempa wrote in his handwriting, "Trial instrument, made under difficult conditions with no tools and materials. Concentration camp, Dachau. Anno 1941, Franciszek Kempa."
The violin maker Kempa survived the war and returned to his native Poland. He died in 1953. The collector couple planned to donate Kempa's violin to a museum. These are stories of resistance. They show that the Nazis did not succeed in destroying everything Jewish.
Hass ist ganz einfach ein Gift und letzten Endes vergiftet man sich selbst.
These stories help ensure that future generations never forget the terrible crimes that were committed, and hopefully never let it happen again.
Music has a different way of telling history. I can tell you what I see. I see that it does move people who come to the concerts and lectures. It does touch the musicians who play them. So I hope it's a good thing.